What is justice? Why is justice important? Who decides what is just and unjust? Have you experienced injustice? How does it feel to encounter one? Other than anecdotal accounts, not much is known about Plato's early life. The association with his friend and mentor Socrates was undoubtedly a major influence. Plato's founding of the Academy, a school formed for scientific and mathematical investigation, not only established the systematic beginning of Western science, but also influenced the structure of higher education from medieval to modern times. Plutarch once wrote, "Plato is philosophy and philosophy is Plato." The Republic, written by Plato, delves into the importance of leading a just life in order to attain happiness. The text presents an ideal city where a just and philosophical government can foster a happy community. The essence of the text can be summed up in three keywords: justice, virtue, and happiness. Plato employs the method of inquiry, where Socrates first questions the meaning of justice and later explains that until an individual comprehends the concept, they cannot fully grasp its relationship with virtue and happiness. Additionally, the text outlines the characteristics of a just city, which include moderation, courage, justice, and wisdom, and emphasizes the importance of these qualities in fostering a harmonious society. In this excerpt from Plato's Republic, Glaucon puts forward an ethical viewpoint known as egoism, which posits that all human actions are motivated by self-interest. This perspective is not aligned with the philosophy of Socrates or Plato, but is presented by Glaucon as a means to develop a more comprehensive ethical theory. While Socrates also recognized the importance of self-interest in human behavior, he had a different understanding of this motive, which took into account the impact of actions on the soul over long term, something that Glaucon overlooked. In this story, Glaucon, the brother of Plato, presents a moral challenge to Socrates. The tale revolves around a shepherd named Gyges who discovers a ring that grants him the power of invincibility. With this newfound ability, Gyges uses it to seduce the queen, murder the king, and take over the kingdom. The story serves as a thought experiment to explore whether people are inherently moral or if they only behave morally due to fear of consequences.
A ring with supernatural abilities tempts its beholder with power. But there are no hobbits, dwarves, or valkyries in this tale. In fact, the legend of the Ring of Gyges appeared long before those characters were ever committed to paper, more than 2,000 years ago, in the Greek philosopher Plato's Republic. The story surfaces as the philosopher Socrates and his student Glaucon discuss why people act justly. Is it because it's what's right, or because it's a convention that's enforced through punishment and reward? Playing devil's advocate, Glaucon argues against Socrates and recounts the following story. Long ago, a shepherd named Gyges was tending his flock when an earthquake struck, ripping an opening in the ground. The chasm drew Gyges in. There, his eyes alighted upon a bronze horse, the doors to its central chamber ajar. Peering inside, Gyges discovered the corpse of a giant. On its finger, a golden ring, which Gyges pocketed before retracing his steps. Later, he sat among the other shepherds, fiddling with the mysterious ring, when, suddenly, after absent-mindedly twirling its stone, he became invisible. When he turned the stone back in the opposite direction, he reappeared. Emboldened by the ring's powers, new possibilities bloomed before him, and a sordid plan hatched in his mind. Gyges became a messenger to the king of Lydia, and, inside the palace, used the ring to prowl undetected. He seduced the queen and convinced her to betray her husband, and soon Gyges, once a humble shepherd, had murdered the monarch and claimed the kingdom. Glaucon tells this story to illustrate how people can apparently benefit by acting unjustly. After all, wouldn't any rational person act like Gyges if presented the opportunity to get what they desired without consequence?
Good evening, viewers. In today's special report, we delve into the moral quandaries presented in Plato's The Ring of Gyges. This ancient philosophical dialogue challenges our understanding of justice and morality.
Indeed, it does. Plato paints a vivid picture of the human condition and the conflict between the pursuit of self-interest and moral integrity.
Plato proposes that the nature of justice is a compromise between the best option of doing injustice without consequences and the worst of suffering injustice without the power to retaliate. In essence, the argument revolves around the idea in the eyes of some doing injustice might be inherently advantageous or good, while suffering injustice is considered undesirable or evil. However, experiencing injustice is seen as worse than committing it.
The passage suggests that people, having experienced both sides of injustice, realize the undesirability of both perpetrating injustice and being its victim. Consequently, societies establish laws and agreements or covenants to maintain order and prevent both individuals and communities from suffering the consequences of unchecked injustice. These laws create a middle ground, what is deemed lawful and just, providing a compromise between the extreme positions of committing and enduring injustice.
According to this argument, justice emerges as a social construct not because it's inherently good but because it represents a compromise between the extremes of suffering injustice without recourse and benefiting from unjust actions without consequences.
It posits that if individuals had the power to avoid suffering and benefit from injustice without facing repercussions, they might choose that path. However, due to the social contract and the existence of laws, people reluctantly accept justice as a compromise, a lesser evil, as they lack the ability to commit unjust acts without facing consequences or to protect themselves fully from suffering injustice.
This viewpoint on justice emphasizes its societal and pragmatic origins rather than its inherent moral goodness.
That's right, this relates to the story of Gyges, a shepherd who discovers a magical ring that grants him the power of invisibility. The context of the story is used to explore the nature of justice. The narrative presents a scenario where both the just and the unjust are given complete freedom and power to act as they please. It hypothesizes that if individuals had an unrestrained ability to fulfill their desires without consequence or restraint, they would likely pursue their own interests, following their desires for personal gain, which is considered their good.
Gyges' story illustrates this argument. Initially a humble shepherd, upon discovering the ring's power of invincibility, he uses it to fulfill his desires without fear of consequences. He becomes invincible at will and will take advantage of this newfound power. Ultimately, he uses the ring's ability to commit unjust acts, seducing the queen, conspiring against and killing the king, and seizing the kingdom for himself.
The Tale of Gyges serves as an allegory to illustrate the idea that individuals, when given absolute power and freedom without the fear of consequences, are inclined to act in their self-interests. It suggests that people are naturally driven by the desires for personal gain and would only adhere to principles of justice and morality due to external forces such as laws and societal constraints. In the context, the passage implies the pursuit of justice is often a result of external constraints rather than an inherent inclination towards doing what is right. It questions whether individuals would act justly if they had the power to act without repercussions, highlighting the role of external forces like laws and societal norms in guiding behavior towards justice.
Plato then questions whether any person, given the power of invincibility, could resist the temptation to act unjustly. He argues that the actions of the just and the unjust would ultimately converge if they possess such power.
Absolutely, the philosopher highlights that true justice doesn't stem from an inherent desire to be just, but rather from the fear of consequences. He argues that people behave justly because they are unable to act unjustly without suffering repercussions.
In this thought experiment, Plato isolates perfectly just and unjust individuals. He contends that the perfectly unjust person must maintain an impeccable facade of justice to attain power and influence.
Conversely, the perfectly just individual must remain steadfast in their moral integrity even if they are unjustly perceived by society. This debate raises questions about the core motivations behind human actions.
Plato's narrative possesses a profound question about human nature, whether individuals act justly due to inherent belief in justice or out of fear of consequences. It challenges us to contemplate the essence of moral choices.
Yes, indeed, the philosophical work prompts us to question whether individuals are naturally inclined towards justice or are merely restrained by societal laws.
Well, it certainly encourages introspection and critical thought about the nature of morality and justice in our lives.
Absolutely. Plato's The Ring of Gyges continues to provoke discussions and reflections on the fundamental principles that govern human behavior.
That's all for today's special report. Thank you for joining us as we explore the intricate and timeless ethical dilemmas presented by Plato.
Tune in for further discussions on thought-provoking philosophical works. Thank you for watching.
Good day, everyone. Hi!
Diskarte lang. Utak lang. Posisyon lang.
Hindi sa'yo yan.
Manong, magkano po dito?
12, boss.
Di na mahalata to. 23, 24. Ito po, Manong, 10 piso. Pre, kumuha pa ako ng 4. Di napansin ni Manong.
Guys, palabas na ng ospital si May pero kulang pa daw siya ng 10,000. Ambagan sana tayo.
Sige.
Dito nyo na lang lagay kung magkano yung kaya. Ako naman nakiisip nitong ambagan, kaya akin na lang ang sobra.
Mayor, ito na po yung mga proposal para dun sa City Garbage Collection Project natin.
Andyan ba yung sa Collect and Collect Incorporated?
Opo, Mayor. Pero mas maganda po ang proposal ng isang company. Mas marami po tayong matutulungan sa offer nila.
Siyempre, kay kumpare ko bibigay. Sayang komisyon ko dito.
Collect and Collect Incorporated ang kukunin natin.
Hindi sa'yo yan. Pera ng bayan yan, Mayor.
Hindi sa'yo yan. Para sa office suite mo ang sakit yan, Camille.
Hindi sa'yo yan. Para sa anak buhay ni Manong yan, Mark.
Maliit man o malaki, ang korupsyon ay korupsyon. Kapag hinayaan, sisirain nito ang kinabukasan ng bayan. Kaya maglakas loob sumigaw ng, "Hindi sa'yo yan!"
Let's now tackle the different philosophers' perspectives on what justice is. In Plato's The Republic, the philosophers Socrates and Glaucon engage in a dialogue that involves the story of the Ring of Gyges to discuss the nature of justice and the behavior of individuals when given extraordinary power. Let's compare and contrast their perspectives. For Socrates, known for his method of questioning in pursuit of truth, he engages in a dialectic with Glaucon to explore the nature of justice. He emphasizes the intrinsic value of justice, arguing that true justice is an inherent good and leads to genuine happiness and fulfillment. Socrates believes that individuals should strive for justice irrespective of external rewards or consequences. He argues that being just is inherently valuable for the soul's well-being. He also highlights the importance of the inner virtues and moral integrity of an individual rather than the external rewards or societal perceptions. For Glaucon, he presents a more pragmatic perspective, arguing that people often adhere to justice due to the societal constraints rather than intrinsic morality. He introduces the story of the Ring of Gyges to support his argument that individuals act justly due to the fear of consequences rather than an inherent inclination towards justice. Glaucon suggests that if given the power to act without repercussions, individuals would prioritize self-interest and engage in unjust acts. His argument revolves around the perceived advantages of unjust behavior when masked under the appearance of justice, indicating that society often rewards the illusion of morality over true virtue. Now, to compare both philosophers' viewpoints on what is justice, both aim to understand the nature of it, albeit from different perspectives. Socrates from an intrinsic and moral standpoint, while Glaucon from a pragmatic and societal viewpoint. They use the story of the Ring of Gyges to illustrate their arguments regarding human behavior and the impact of power on moral conduct. Both acknowledge the complexities surrounding human behavior, acknowledging the role of external forces and internal virtues in shaping actions. Now, while Socrates prioritizes intrinsic morality and the importance of inner virtues, believing that justice is an inherent good, Glaucon emphasizes the role of external consequences and societal perceptions, suggesting that individuals are more motivated by self-interest and the fear of punishment. In essence, Socrates emphasizes the intrinsic value of justice, while Glaucon focuses on the external influences and consequences that shape human behavior, highlighting the tension between intrinsic morality and societal influences in the pursuit of justice.
And that's all for today's Time Sizzling News. Once again, I am Lara Gajo.
And I am Hope Dairo.
Thank you.
Sana iyong marinig, tibok ng damdamin. Ikaw ay mahalaga sa akin, ang awitin ko'y